All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. Got a Tuesday slate for you. That initial thoughts, for me at least, is that we are still waiting on news for a lot of the top plays. What are your initial thoughts for this slate, Nick?
Yeah, same here, man. We're waiting on Luca. I personally think he's in. We're waiting on Wemby. I personally think he's out. Again, I really have no reason to think this way, but we're going to need this news before we make these major decisions. We do have some value opening up in some other spots, but yeah, I don't know. We got to kind of wait and see on those two pieces for sure. Jalen Brunson did play the other night, but he's questionable again. Obviously, if he's out, things could change quickly. So yeah, I mean, decent sized slate on both sites. Unlike last night, we have the same slate on both sites, which is good, both just cutting off that late game. But yeah, man, plenty to talk through, and hopefully we get that news before the end of the stream today.
Yeah, I think we start with the news that we do have, and I would say the biggest spot would be Toronto as it sits right now. But at the same time, everyone's kind of correctly priced for the most part. You know me, I like Jordan Wara like there, but he's not a lock in low plays. He's the GPP upside type play. You got Kelly Olynyk there with Jakob Poeltl out, and then obviously Scotty Barnes is going to be out as well. Are you finding, and then Bruce Brown is still out as well, are you finding yourself playing any of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Olynyk on FanDuel. I'm back on FanDuel tonight, especially because we have that power forward eligibility. He is a little cheaper over there. He's going to be 60% owned, but I do think that's kind of tough to get away from. I don't mind Quickly or Barrett, but their prices did come up. Other than those two, I mean, I'm a little bit shocked by the ownership on Agbaji here, but I do think if he starts again, he's a half decent piece of value. Obviously, Grady Dick has been okay coming off the bench, but certainly a little bit inconsistent, so tough to feel too good about that. But it's interesting. They have guards that should see increased run tonight in Trent, Agbaji, Grady Dick, but it's just which of these guys is going to get there for you. So I don't know. At the ownership, I almost like pivoting off of Agbaji, but I think if you're playing cash games on FanDuel, he does make a lot of sense at 4,100.
Yeah, and I would say he makes a pretty good GPP play on DraftKings where he's only 1%. Like, we don't know for sure what's going to happen here, but he's projected to get 30 minutes. And to me, that's still intriguing. But yeah, I do want to call. I think Jordan Wara GPP wise, at least on DraftKings, where he's almost min price, 400 off of min price. We haven't projected to get 18 minutes. He's a guy that's going to shoot the basketball. So he could be ice cold and maybe at 12 minutes. He could be very hot shooting the basketball, get 23 minutes. I just like that the fact that the opportunities are going to be there. Not someone that we need to go crazy with. He is 12%. That does worry me.
Yeah, I mean, at the price, he's definitely tempting. I think there are more kind of sub 4K plays on this slate than we usually have, so we do have options, but I don't mind mixing him in if you're playing a bunch of lineups. It's just, yeah, the minutes have been kind of inconsistent, which makes it a little bit tough to feel excited about him here.
Yeah. So the next spot I think we can go to is Cleveland, but we've kind of seen this situation a bunch. We are currently having LeVert projected for minutes, however. So the players that are listed out that we know, Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell, and then kind of the same people that have been out. Isaac Okoro is a game time decision with Karis LeVert. At his price, LeVert, is he someone you're looking at if he plays? On
On
DraftKings specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say on DK, yes. I do want to keep it on the ownership though. Last I checked, I mean, 24% does feel a little bit heavy. I mean, I'd rather go to Garland if I could find the salary. I mean, he hasn't really been showing us the ceiling with Mitchell out, but I do think it's there. Obviously, not a great matchup here against the Celtics, but the spread is less than 10 points, which means the game should at least be somewhat competitive into the fourth quarter, one would think. Celtics had Porzingis and Brown questionable all day. They were just ruled in, so we do see that spread kind of widening just a bit. But yeah, I don't mind getting to Cleveland here. Mobley as well has had some massive games with Mitchell out, really taking on kind of a, I don't know, lead role with that offense, even shooting more than Garland at times. So I don't mind mixing him in. But obviously, I mean, this is not a great matchup for these guys. They are all kind of priced where they should be. If Okoro and LeVert were to be out, maybe Sam Merrill becomes interesting again. I mean, at his current price, I'm not excited to get there, but I do think he's probably going to have to get a bunch of shots up if those guys are ruled out on the wing. So a little bit of wait and see here, but I will say I do like Garland and Mobley, who are pretty low owned, relatively speaking.
I second that. We saw kind of the exact same situation last game for them where they went against New York. Obviously, that's not a matchup that we love targeting, but at the same time, they still feel a little bit too cheap for what they can do and have done. Kind of the next spot I think that's worth mentioning, just kind of going down the list in order of the games, would be Miami. So Miami, it's not too big. in terms of news, but I think it's enough. So we got Patty Mills, game time decision, just signed. That's kind of fun. But Tyler Hero still out, Kevin Love still out, and then Josh Richardson still out. We're seeing Jimmy Butler's kind of getting a lot of ownership. Terry Rozier is kind of the play that I think makes a lot of sense, and he's not as high on it. And then you got Bam. Are you looking at any of those three or just anyone else from Miami?
I mean, I don't mind Bam or Butler. And then Duncan Robinson has been shooting the ball pretty well, so I don't mind mixing him in tournaments. I think the reason Rozier isn't very popular is just we have a lot of good guard value on the slate. And then if Luke is in, obviously we're going to be wanting to pay up for him. I did just see that Brunson was ruled out, so McBride's going to become very popular. We have Mitchich there for the Hornets. We have the guards for Philly. Schroeder's been playing great. I mean, there's just so many good guards on this slate that I think Rozier's getting a bit overlooked. But I mean, at the same time, you could kind of play him at low ownership and just hope that works out. He does have shooting guard eligibility, which makes him a little bit easier to get to. But at the same time, I mean, there is some blowout risk here, even with Hero out. I don't mind Bam or Butler at their respective prices, but I don't know. I think where Rozier's priced, it's kind of tough for me to get to him with any sort of aggression, just knowing the plays around him look so damn good.
Yeah. Any love for Jovic there, where he's a little cheap, and with Love out, we have seen times where he gets a little bit additional run. We have him projected for 20 plus.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, he's someone I'd definitely be mixing in, and this is under the assumption that he will be starting here. Some of those bigger games he had, they were even thinner than they are now, though. I think Butler was out for one of those. I know Caleb Martin had been in and out. Orlando Robinson isn't really a major piece of this team, but he's back in the rotation. So I don't know. I like Jovic here. Kevin Love isn't a guy who always plays a ton of minutes, though, so it's not like he's absorbing a ton from him. And then, I think Duncan Robinson and Hawkes are eating a lot of those minutes from Hero. So I like Jovic. I like that he's starting. I like that he's cheap. But I don't think he's going to close here. So unless he gets hot early, which we have seen him do from time to time, then I don't know that he's going to hit value. So I'd mix him in, but probably not a priority for me here.
Yeah. And that actually answers a couple of questions that we got. So about Jovic there. And then we did just get Tom saying that your mic was a little bit too loud. I just turned it down slightly. So
Okay. Yeah, I pulled away more. I'm hoping that helped it a little bit. But
I think we're slightly. I turned it down to like 70%. So we got Jayhawk calling out that Jalen Brunson is out. So let's go ahead and get into that. So New York, that's going to open up a lot. I think we kind of know what to do though with this news already. I'm going to refresh this on my end. Tell me where you're starting.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, this is a great matchup for them. So we're going to get a lot to like here. I love McBride. I mean, the price is up on him a little bit. He's 5,500 on DK, 5,700 on FanDuel now. But he's hit value every single game he started with Brunson out since the trade deadline. So I love McBride here. I feel even better about him than I do these Philly guards who seem to be pretty popular earlier in the day. But DiVincenzo's had some really solid games. Again, Randall's still out too, so there's a lot of usage to go around. Josh Hart, definitely the higher floor play compared to DiVincenzo. Not always as involved on offense, but I love all three of those guys here. Then in the front court.
Real quickly with Hart, just are you worried about his ceiling though at that price or no?
No, I mean, he's coming off a game where he had 64 fantasy points, 50 plus the game before it. So, I mean, he has the ceiling, and it's not something I probably would have been banking on coming into the season, but we've seen it lately. So, yes, he's expensive, but this is a great matchup for them, too. I know the Hawks aren't as pacey with Trae Young out, but they still probably pace up the Knicks here enough to like them a little bit more than where they're priced. So, I like Hart a lot. I like DiVincenzo, and McBride's a core play for me for sure.
I think that's fair. I think you summed that up pretty well. Any need to touch on Atlanta and the other side of that? I mean, DeJounte Murray is priced correctly. I mean, you got the two Bogdanoviches in this game. I mean, that's kind of fun, and they're both in okay spots, honestly. There's no narrative there. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, Bogdanovich for Atlanta, I mean, he's been kind of boomer bust. I don't mind mixing him in. Definitely not a priority. I do like DeJounte just because he's low owned. I think he's a good tournament play. He has flashed serious upside. This should be kind of a competitive game with a lot of points in transition, which does favor him. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I mean, I'm trying to get to Luka if he's in aggressively. There's a few other really good guards on this slate, but I know the price is up, but that's keeping the ownership down. And I do like this matchup a little bit more now that Brunson's out of there. So I'm fine getting to some Murray as a tournament play, but certainly just a tournament play. That's high risk. And then the other starters look fine. I mean, I would mix in maybe Jalen Johnson here. Bay and Hunter have kind of been okay. Capella, I can't trust the minutes. So it really is Murray more than anything for me on the Hawks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then really the other big sort of injury spot, and we are somewhat still waiting on news, I would say, is Philly versus Brooklyn as a whole. We can just start with Philly here. There's a lot of players that are listed out, so we're getting a lot of chalk there. So Kelly Oubre is looking like he's going to be chalk. Cameron Payne also looking like he's going to be chalk. Kyle Lowry, decent play, not the best. And then Tobias Harris does feel too cheap, but he healed. We've seen him. He's a decent GPP play. But the reason why we're getting this is because Covington's still out, Embiid out, Maxey out, and then Melton is still out. So who are you looking at today for Philly?
I mean, before we got the New York news, I was going to be on Lowry. That ownership is a little bit lower than I thought it should be. His role here with Philly has been very different than what we were seeing with the Heat. I mean, he is very involved when he is on the floor with or without Maxey. Obviously, without Maxey, that upside goes way up.
Yeah.
Oubre, I think, is kind of the core play here. I mean, just a little bit too cheap for his upside. We're projecting him around 33 minutes. Campaign, to me, is kind of bad chalk, but I do think that ownership comes down now on DK, even at 3,200. He's fine, but he's been banged up. We're projecting him for 22 minutes. I don't know that he's a lock for that necessarily here. And when he's on the floor, I mean, Lowry's been the better fantasy point per minute player. So it's kind of strange that he's so much more popular. I do get it with the pricing difference, but I love Oubre here. I think he's good chalk. Payne, I think there's better guard value now, but I will be mixing in Harris, Lowry, and Hield. But I do want to bring this up too. Mo Bamba's been starting at center, but Paul Reed has been the much better fantasy producer off the bench. No one's going to play him because he's not going to be starting here. Day'Ron Sharp's out for the Nets tonight. They're bringing up Noah Clowney to kind of play that backup center role. There should be a lot of minutes for Paul Reed where he's going to be the best big on the floor. I like him a lot here as a tournament play. Only 5,100 over on DK, 6,100 on FanDuel. Everything else on this team's very popular, but the front court is not. I do expect Bamba to start, so he's going to be the more popular player. But we've seen really, really good games out of Reed off the bench, and he has been closing as well. So love the spot for Paul Reed here as a tournament play. I think he's one of my sneakier spots today. I'll probably get some exposure even if I'm only playing a handful of lineups.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Batum there? Because I kind of to your point, like I don't like Mo Bamba, but he's projected to give 25 minutes, and this is with the caveat that KJ Martin does sit as well, who's a game time decision.
Yeah, if Martin's out, I think you can get there. I mean, we've seen Batum go over 30 fantasy points, which obviously at his price looks amazing. At the same time, I mean, he's kind of deferring to everyone else when he is on the floor, at least on the offensive end. So he's boom or bust. I mean, he is upside. I don't hate it. Definitely feel better about it if Martin's out, but at the same time, I wouldn't call him a core player safe. If you're playing 150, getting a few percent, I think he's okay. But just the type of player that is usually the last guy in. He has enough upside to maybe justify his price, but I don't know. He's like a poor man's Harrison Barnes, and Harrison Barnes isn't all that great either.
That's true. Yeah, to your point though with Mo Bamba, like I would say that those two, the ownership should be flipped on those 2 like especially with the man's projection. I don't really get what's happening there with Mo Bamba. It's not a lot of ownership, but it's enough to bring it up. So let's go ahead and flip this over, and I'll just let you take this one as well. So we got the Brooklyn Nets. So with the Brooklyn Nets, we still have, you mentioned Day'Ron Sharpie's out, Ben Simmons is still out, and then Cam Thomas is out. So we got a lot of big usage players, and Lonnie Walker is a game time decision as well. So we're getting a lot of ownership for Brooklyn as well. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the Nets were so embarrassing last night, losing to the Grizzlies, a game they certainly should have won. You hear in the post game, like they came out flat, they overlooked them. It was a complete embarrassment. I think they do come out aggressive here. I think they do play sharp in this spot. On the back-to-back, and with Maxey out, I do think this should be a competitive game. So I like Schroeder. He's been excellent on both sides. Seeing more minutes here, obviously seeing more usage with Cam Thomas out. We have him for 34 minutes. I think he's a safe guard play. His ownership should come down now, too, with that Knicks news. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Cam Johnson, very streaky as a shooter, but he's hot right now. Another guy I'm fine getting to. And then I don't mind Bridges' price, but he's kind of fourth for me. I do like Claxton as well. Again, with Sharp out, I think his minutes are a bit more secure. Not a terrible matchup for him either with the Embiid-less Sixers on the other side of the ball. But yeah, this was just an embarrassing team last night. Disgusting performance against the Grizzlies. But they know it, and we heard it in the post-game conference. So I'm kind of hoping they bounce back here in a big way. And I don't know. If I'm ranking them, I do like Schroeder best, but there's so many good guards. But right behind him, I'd have Johnson and Claxton. Not too interested in Bridges, but you can mix them in. And then Finney-Smith seeing enough minutes to be relevant. I'd play him over Batum, for example. But at the same time, he has a very low floor, so not something I feel very confident in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What about DFS? Because I feel like he's a little bit chalky here, but he's projected at 32 minutes, and value wise, he's popping up decent amounts. And so we saw before with Sharp out that was kind of Finney Smith getting some of that run at the 5 a little bit. I don't know. See someone you're looking at it all?
Yeah, like I said, I think you can mix him in. He should get some minutes at the 5, but more likely than not, he's going to start here at the 4. So it's not like he's going to be playing the direct backup minutes at center. They also have Watford and Clowney who can maybe take up a few of those minutes. So I'm fine with Finney-Smith, but seeing he's 20+% owned on both sites, I'm very comfortable getting away from that. I mean, he's going to be shooting threes. He does have upside for that reason, but if they're not falling, I mean, that's very likely a piece of chalk that could fail here. I think he's popular because everyone's expecting him to take on those backup center minutes, but if he's in the starting lineup, I mean, he's likely playing a lot of minutes with Claxton. So I don't know. I don't mind him. If he was lower owned, I'd be more interested, but at 20+% on both sides, I'm pretty comfortable getting away from that.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good call about him starting. So something to monitor there. And then I do just want to call it. So we got one comment saying my volume's low. We got one comment saying your volume's too high. Which one is it? Is there? Can we get a confirmation there? Because I can lower Nick's volume to the point where we're both equal, or and just
or raise yours, or I don't know.
I can't really raise mine too much, but I could lower yours to the point where it's equal with mine, and then they could just turn up the volume. So I'm just kind of interested there. It's weird because on my end it sounds exactly the same. So I don't know. Does it sound the same on your end too?
Yeah, I don't hear myself in my monitor, but you sound good to me, so I think we're okay. But again, we're at the mercy of the crowd here. Just let us know.
Yeah. We did get some questions and kind of some comments about Cleveland as well. So I want to jump back into that. So we got a question about Sam Merrill tonight from Power. And I think it's a great question, but I think we need to start with saying that it really just depends on who's active for Cleveland as well. So basically, does Dean Wade get a little bit more run instead of Merrill, which could happen going against Boston? But if we get news that Levert and Okoro are both active, I feel like we're just not even thinking about Merrill as a play.
Yeah, I mean, if Merle starts, you can mix him in. I just think there's so much value on the slate that I prefer. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. And if Dean Wade starts, I still wouldn't touch Dean Wade. Just a player I'm never on. It's very rare he even gets close to 20 fantasy points, even if he plays 30+ minutes. So keep it on the starting lineup. I do see Merrill projected to start most places. I would definitely probably get away from that if he's coming off the bench, though. So if you're right in that they need to start Wade here, because Porzingis is in, the Celtics are going to be a pretty big team, then maybe you get away from that. But I don't know that they want to get too big. You kind of need spacing. Like you have Allen, you have Mobley, and then you have Okoro. Like you need a couple guys that could hit threes and open up the floor. And I think Sam Merrill's kind of been providing that for them lately. So I actually think they do start Merrill for the spacing, but I guess we'll wait and see. That game does lock at 7:30.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's see here. So we got Mobley smashed by as well, 6+ assists. Yeah, we have seen him step up. It's just the matchup to Nick's point there. So we got conflicting messages about the audio. I don't know what to do. I lowered yours a little bit more because some people were saying mine is still low.
Yeah.
So it should be better now. It should be closer at least. So we'll see. It's just strange. I don't really get it.
Yeah, if you need to lower me, I'm not offended. I don't mind. But
yeah, I did. I lowered it a little bit, so it should be, at least be better. I don't know. We'll see. It seems to just be some weird thing between our audio mixes for whatever reason, but we continue on. So we got a question: is Mobley out? I didn't see that just yet.
Oh, that's Wemby. It says.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, is Wemby out?
He's questionable.
Still questionable, and Julian Champagne still questionable as well. Branham had a good game in his last game. We can touch on that real quick. Just the Spurs. Do we have an indication of like where we should be going if Wemby is out? Like, are we just loading up on Zach Collins, maybe Seti, Keldon Johnson? What are your kind of thoughts there if Wemby is out?
Yeah, so The Rockets, after Sengun, they played Jeff Green at the 5 as the backup a lot. We haven't been seeing a ton of Jock Landell, so I think they could play small more often than not here. So I wouldn't feel great about Collins just because the minutes aren't necessarily guaranteed. Obviously, at his price, I mean, he's going to be a solid tournament play, but I don't know that I'm like rushing to Zach Collins if Wemby's out. I'd wait and see what the data says. The one play I would love is actually Devin Vassell. He's been tremendous. I'm seeing a very high usage rate with or without Wemby on the floor. 50-point upside out of him over the past couple of weeks, and I think that could climb even higher here if Wemby were out. It would probably present some blowout risk. The Rockets haven't been all that great, though, so I would like Vassell a lot with Wemby out. Collins, if he starts at center, definitely going to be someone you could get to, but I wouldn't lock him in or anything like that, just because Houston is capable of going small at times. So, yes, it would be Collins first and foremost as value. But for me, more than anything, I'd probably try to get heavy on Devin Vassell.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you guys for all the comments about the volume as well. I do appreciate that. So we should be good to go. So the next question that we got, does Sengun get a bump if Wemby is out? And I don't know. My initial thoughts is it could be the opposite. Because to your point, the game could blow out. And I don't know, Wemby is an easy, difficult matchup. I don't know how to describe it because he will be one of the best defenders in the league, but you can also kind of have your way with him if you keep him in front of you almost. I don't know. It's weird.
I don't think it's going to change too much, honestly. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, maybe he plays a few less minutes if Wemby's out because they can play smaller. They can kind of run and gun. It does present some slight blowout risk, again, if Wemby's out as well. He's already projected to be very popular here. I think he's a little bit too cheap for his upside at 8,200 on both sites. So I like him as a play, but I don't think that's going to change much for me in either direction if Wemby is ruled out. I'm hoping Wemby's in. I'm thinking Wemby's in, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. We're dealing with Pop here. I mean, what mood did he wake up in today? That's what we're gonna have to ask ourselves.
He seems like an afternoon nap guy though too. So it's like, all right, what mood did he wake up after his afternoon nap?
Definitely.
But yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into the guard plays. We did a pretty good just breakdown in general, I think, already, but let's just highlight the guard plays that we are getting today. So in general, you mentioned if Luka's active, we're probably going to be paying out for him, as I feel like we've been saying for the past month now. He's kind of just been a go-to play. Is there any reason on the slate, given the other plays that are out there, where, especially given his pricing on both sites, where you're not playing him?
I mean, there's a ton of good guard value tonight. You don't have to force in Luka, and as the ownership climbs, I don't know. I mean, I could see getting away from it. But yeah, I mean, we're going to have McBride starting now. We already talked about Lowry is a pretty decent play. Mitchell is starting at point guard again for Charlotte. One we didn't touch on yet, Fultz is actually out for Orlando in that same game. So I know I'm personally going to want to get to some Suggs. He's been a guy I've been pretty aggressive on in those spots. So there's a lot of good guard value. Up top, I mean, there's a few decent plays. I think if you're paying up, you want to get to Luka for the most part. Halliburton hasn't really flashed much of a ceiling lately. I don't mind Murray at his price, but he's probably a little bit more expensive than he should be here. I like Garland in the mid-range. I'd mix him in. But, yeah, I think there's enough good guards tonight. If you don't like some of these punts we're talking about, you could go more balanced and not play Luka. I know for me personally, I think I trust the value enough that I can get to him pretty aggressively, though.
Yeah, we did just get this question. If Luka is out, is Kyrie a lock? And just looking at the OF index, already Kyrie is kind of popping up as a good play as is. So we don't like to use the lock word, but it seems like he'd be someone we would definitely be going out of our way to play, right?
Yes, certainly. I mean, he's going to be underpriced if Luka's out. And it's interesting. I mean, with previous teams and even early in his Dallas career with Luka out, he wasn't always hitting those ceilings as we'd expect him to with Luka out. But this season, I think because of the way the roster is kind of comprised now, he's been getting there way more often. I would love Kyrie if Luka's out. And I'd also make sure you get to a lot of PJ Washington as well. Really good offensive player, kind of defers to the guards when they're healthy. But another guy I think would see a big boost that might not get captured by the data as aggressively. So if Luke is out, definitely get to Kyrie and definitely get to some PJ Washington as well, in my opinion. Really high total in this matchup.
Yeah, that's a good point about PJ Washington, which I don't like because Prize Picks, I had a lot of his unders, and so that would hurt if Luka was out
Let's
because
just
you're
get
right.
Luca in. I want Luca to
Yeah,
play. So
exactly. So we did like get some like questions. Who are the priorities at each position? Well, in terms of guards, we're on guards right now. We have a lot of value, and so it does feel like probably at least one Philly guard is a priority, whether that be Kelly Oubre, whether that be Kyle Lowry, maybe campaign in terms of value. Where'd you settle on there again?
yeah, I mean, Oubre's forward only on DK, but I do like him the best out of those three guys for Philly. I'd rank Lowry second, even though Payne's way more popular on DK. I just don't know that I trust the minutes for Payne necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, I'm personally going to be pretty heavy on Dennis Schroeder here. I think he's going to continue to see massive usage as long as Cam Thomas is out. Bridges really just hasn't been all that great on offense lately. Um, so I'll mix him in. Garland's another one, and then McBride, assuming he starts. I did just see that they did say Shake Milton's going to be available for the Knicks tonight for the first time.
Hmm.
I don't think that's going to affect too much. We know Thibs really likes to run these super tight rotations. I think McBride's probably a bet to push 40 minutes here anyway. So I really do love McBride, probably my favorite value play now. And then Mitchich for Charlotte's another guy you probably have to mix in.
Yeah, just real quickly on Charlotte there. No love for like Trey Mann. Is he just too high priced now? And then Brandon Miller shooting guard eligible on DraftKings. Any love for those guys? Because you mentioned Mitchich a decent amount, and he's chalk for a reason, I would say. But any love for those other two?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Mann was the guy when that trade first happened, but he's kind of been deferring more to everyone else. Like we've seen higher usage for Miller and Mitchich lately. Mitchich last game, it was interesting. He had a terrible first half and then kind of got it going in the second half. So I don't know. He's still a little bit risky, but right now at their respective price points, I think the safer point per dollar play definitely is Mitchich. It's not a great matchup. So if you're playing Trey Mann, I mean, you're kind of chasing a ceiling that might not be there. With Mitchich, there's a little bit less you need out of him. And I do think even if this game were to somehow get out of hand, he could play into the fourth quarter. So I like Mitchich just a little bit more. I like what I've seen lately. But I mean, if the field's zigging, you could always zag and go away. But it's been a while since we've seen a ceiling game out of Mitchich, out of Mann, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I don't know against Orlando. That's a spot I'd be trying to chase that.
Yeah, for me, I kind of just want to fade Charlotte for the most part, just given the
Yeah.
matchup. I don't really like that matchup. One spot, real quickly, for the guards that we didn't really mention is a little bit more of Houston as well. So we have Fred VanVleet, that's kind of chalk, and then Jalen Green, that's kind of chalk as well. Dylan Brooks pulling in double-digit ownerships on both sites as well. I get it for sure. Maybe there is a little bit more risk. Again, if Wemby does sit in terms of these guys, maybe I don't think it's going to blow out regardless, but maybe it does. Like Van Fleet's been excellent lately, and then so has Jalen Green lately for the most part as well. Are those two players that you are getting to tonight? I feel like people are trying to ride the hot hand here, but is that something you would want to continue to roll with if you are someone that had been rostering those guys?
Yeah, I mean, they're a little bit too cheap for their upside. I kind of see this backcourt similar to Boston, though, where it's like you have Drew there, you have White. Most of the time, Tatum's the guy, and like most of the time here, Sengun's the guy. Jabari Smith's been really solid as well. So, while I like them, I think they're good tournament plays. Like, it's tough to project one over the other. I think you can mix them in and feel good about it. They definitely have the type of ceilings that you're looking for in tournaments. But in like lower risk type contests, like, I don't know who on a given night is going to be the guy to go off. And I know they're both coming off back to back great games. But for a while, like Van Fleet just wasn't shooting the ball.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a trend we can expect to continue moving forward. I know he had a really solid game last time out, took 11 threes, hit 6 of them. But yeah, I mean, they're both too cheap for their upside, but they're both not cheap enough for me to call them core plays, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just a wide range of outcomes on these guys. But yeah, mix them in your tournament builds. It's just, I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I felt better about one over the other. They're all good, but I mean, one could flop and the other two could go off. It's kind of a tricky situation.
Yeah. So we got some questions coming in from Unicorn Love. Basically about Abaji there. We kind of mentioned him already. He does seem to be somewhat chalk on tonight. Well, not on DraftKings, but on FanDuel he is chalk. Like it's a big discrepancy that we have with him. So this is a FanDuel specific question. What are your thoughts on him again?
I mean, if I knew he was going to play the same minutes as last game, I'd almost lock him in. Back with Utah, I mean, he was a guy taking a ton of threes. I think here, with so many guys out, he's going to have the shots. I like him at 4,100, but if he's going to be chalk, I don't feel as good about it. He is somewhat
Yeah.
scoring dependent, and the minutes are tough to project here against a bigger team in New Orleans. I like him, but just maybe don't have your whole night hang on him. If you're only playing one lineup, I think he's fine. But yeah, I mean, if you're playing a bunch, maybe just match the field. His ownership was definitely a little bit more inflated than I expected it to be. I thought he was going to be a sneaky play today, but then seeing he's like 20 to 30% owned, I'm almost like, I kind of have to rethink this one now.
That it was the early news, but so everyone responded faster. The
Mhm.
other question was Tobias Harris on FanDuel. So on both sites, he does feel to be certainly in play. At his price on FanDuel, he's a slightly worse value, but still not bad. He's a little bit chalkier though on FanDuel. Project to get 36 minutes going against Brooklyn. I would say that's the biggest concern is going against Brooklyn, but he feels like a safe play, right?
I mean, that's the thing. I like his upside, but I don't know that I can call him safe. It's just his range of outcomes has been all over the place. Like we see him with floor games sometimes, even with Max, beat out, and then we see him go for 50 plus. So like, I kind of feel similar about him in the front court as I do about the Houston guys in the backcourt. I like him as a tournament play. I think he has 50-point upside, but at the same time, if we see huge games out of Hield and Oubre and maybe Reed off the bench or something like that, there's not a world. I mean, there is a world that exists where
Yeah.
he's not as involved on offense as we want him to be. So I like him, but a player like that, when they're in the 7K range, is a little bit riskier because you're allotting all that salary there. Like, I'm more comfortable taking these boom bust guys when they're cheap. But yeah, I mean, Harris has plenty of upside here, no Maxi. He's priced where he should be, though, in my opinion. I like him. But again, I would be lying if I didn't say he had a low floor. We have seen it at times. And he is that guy who can burn you when you're paying 7K plus for someone like that.
So we did just get an interesting question, I would say, as well. So Ingram core play question mark, and I find that interesting because I would imagine it's a question because he is somewhat popping up DK value wise. Considering his price, he is someone that stands out a decent amount going against Toronto. It should be an easy matchup as well. He feels too cheap as well, pulling in double digit ownerships. I wouldn't say he's a core play on tonight's slate specifically. If this was a 4-game slate and he was this price, yes. But just looking at it in terms of value right now, like we have so many other value plays forward wise that are almost or just as good. But where are you at with like Ingram there? Is he a solid player? Are you liking him as a play?
It's interesting. It's tough for me to call him core, like you said, because there's so much value, but I think it kind of depends on your definition of what a core play is. I'll say, like, for forwards priced around 8K, he's probably my favorite tonight. And there are a bunch available. I mean, we have Butler, we have Barrett, we have, I don't know, a bunch of these guys.
Yeah.
Harris, we just talked about, Jalen Johnson. Like, I
New
like Ingram
York.
more than all these guys. And he's not as popular as I thought he would be here. So, I don't know. I won't say he's a core play for me, but he is one of my favorite forwards priced in that range. So, if you need a core play in that range, then I guess he might be. I really, really like him here. Like, I don't want to undersell him. It's funny. Zion was like going on this tear, but he's kind of taking a back seat now, and
Yeah.
Ingram's kind of having his day again. But yeah, it seems like Ingram is going to continue to outproduce Zion. At least for a little while, and I'm more comfortable going to Ingram. So love him here. This is not the Raptors that they were last season or before the break. Not the
Yeah.
defensive threat when you're talking about opposing defenses. So I really, really do like Ingram. Can I call him a core play? I don't know, just because there's so many value plays, I'm going to be prioritizing over him.
Yeah.
But when I find myself in that range, he's definitely one of my favorites.
And I do just want to remind people before we move on to dissenters, we do have the New York Knicks plays. We mentioned those as well already. It seems like you kind of like Josh Hart a little bit more. I kind of like Dante DiVincenzo a little bit more. I will say those two, in terms of like DK value rating or FanDuel value rating, they're not popping up, and DiVincenzo more so, but they're not popping up as much as you would want. For their ownerships, like DiVincenzo 11.7, and just in comparison to people around him, like not as sexy there. And then same thing with Josh Hart. So kind of not as good, but I would say fine chalk. But with that, let's actually go in and move on into centers here. And then we will kind of give you guys a first look build, and then we'll begin out of here. So that we did get a question right now about Wendell Carter and option again. So shout out to Jayhawk on the last video that I was on with him for calling out Wendell Carter as a play. He smashed.
Oh, yeah.
Any love for him today?
Yeah, I think it's good that Richards was ruled in for the Charlotte because they're going to need Carter to play some minutes here. Again, Fultz is out. Obviously, Fultz isn't a center, but that could create some more minutes for Carter here. It's weird. They kind of run positionless in Orlando at times. I don't mind him. I think he's fine as a tournament play. Kind of similar to some of these other guys we're talking about. Low floor, high ceiling. But at his price, I do think he's kind of worth including and mixing in. Not a bad matchup here at all against Charlotte. And yeah, continues to be a little bit too cheap knowing what he's capable of.
Yeah. And then just looking at some of the other center plays that we have, a lot of the center plays that are popping up, at least on DraftKings, are power forward eligible as well. You got Wemby, you got Kelly Olynyk, you got Evan Mobley, a little bit of Jalen Smith, but not the best there in terms of ownership. That's the thing. We're not getting too much ownership in general, though, for the center position. It's just really not there. It's Sengun, it's Claxton, Bam as well. So I don't know, which one do you like the most? I know Olynyk is center only on FanDuel and Mobley's power forward, and Wemby's only power forward eligible on FanDuel. But collectively, where are you looking at for the centers?
So I just want to say this first. I think we have to correct the model. Olynyk does have power forward eligibility
Does he?
on FanDuel. So I love Olynyk. I think he's safe here, obviously, with Podol out. Again, I don't mind Claxton, especially on DK, knowing Day'Ron Sharp's out tonight. But I think my two favorite center plays are actually a little bit lower owned. I talked about Paul Reed earlier, coming off the bench behind Bamba. No one's going to play him. He's 6% owned on DK, 1% on FanDuel. Love his upside in this matchup. Then the other one's actually Miles Turner. I'm surprised he's sub 10% on both sites. His last game against Dallas, he scored 30 plus real points.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to get that again here, but I think sub 7K, this has continued to be a good matchup for opposing centers, even after the deadline where they brought in Washington and Gafford. So I'm going to go right back to Turner here in tournaments. Really, really like his upside in the spot at low ownership. It's tough to get different with all the chalk we have at forward and guard tonight. I do think Olynyk's good chalk, but you could play him at forward. I think this is where you could probably get different. So for me, I'm going to be playing some low-owned Paul Reed, some low-owned Miles Turner, and kind of hoping they outperform some of the chalk that's around them in terms of price.
I think that's fair. I actually really like the Miles Turner call out there. I think that's very solid. And we mentioned Mobley as well. Just does feel a little bit too low owned given how well he's played recently. But that could flip to Jared Allen at the same time. But tough to say for sure.
Yeah, I like Mobley for sure.
But with that, if you guys have more questions, get those in. And we just got one here, so let's jump into that. And so Halliburton or Murray. So DeJounte Murray or Tyrese Halliburton.
What's the day to say?
Yeah, right. I just want to default to that. So we'll go Murray. Murray's. I'm guessing it's DeJounte, right? Pricing wise.
It has Halliburton slightly higher, but I honestly think for me it might be Murray. Just I don't know that the data's fully accounting for Trey being out. And Halliburton, I don't know what the deal is. Like we've not seen a ceiling game out of him in a really long time.
I think it's matchup related. It's got to be, Atlanta going against New York, not as good.
Mm-hmm.
Indy going against Dallas, which is supposed to be, a high scoring game. I would imagine that's why.
That's fair.
But yeah, I get the question. Like
it's close. Yeah, I think Murray might be safer, and then maybe Halliburton is the higher ceiling. You're also getting Halliburton much lower owned. So if your lineup's pretty chalky, I'd probably go Halliburton, try to get different, and just hope maybe he finally spikes that upside. But if you're playing in like a smaller field or a low risk contest, I just play Murray, just knowing he's going to see massive usage here with Trae Young still out.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's tough.
We got kind of a comment about Mobley getting into foul trouble in the last game. I don't know. People don't like matchups. So I think that's what it comes down to with Mobley having low ownership. Halliburton does feel like he is due, but I don't know, it's been weird. And then so we got a question about Orlando plays. So you already mentioned you kind of like Suggs. We did get another comment about Banchero as well as a play. So what are your thoughts on kind of Orlando? We already mentioned Carter, but what are your thoughts on Banchero actually directly there?
I'm fine with him. He is a little bit pricey compared to some of the other options we have in that range. I talked about Ingram, who I slightly prefer over him for a little bit cheaper. But yeah, he's going to be lower owned than he probably should be. This is a very soft matchup. He's got upside. If you want to mix him in, I think it's fine.
And then last question here before we get into a first look build, Jabari Smith. Another one that you kind of mentioned in passing, we have some Houston value in general. So I don't think we want to go too crazy with the Houston plays. Like Green, Van Fleet, I personally feel like are safer. You got Sangoon who's pulling in a lot of ownership at the center spot, but yeah, Jabari Smith, 9%, 5%, projected to get 36 or so minutes. That's certainly appealing. And going against San Antonio has a great DK value rating. Is he someone you like maybe more than those guys or just as much? What are your thoughts on Jabari Smith tonight?
I mean, I like Smith because, like I said, I think one of these Houston guys probably spikes the ceiling, maybe 2 or 3, but we're seeing a ton of chalk that we need to eat at the guard position, so it's tougher for me to get to Van Fleet and Green. I do like Jabari Smith. I mean, his past couple games a little bit lower in terms of overall production, but that's where we saw those guards spike in upside. So, like I said, it's tough. This has become one of those teams now where you know you're going to get good performances on a night-to-night basis, but you're not going to know who it's going to be. So, if you want to play some Jabari Smith, I think it's fine, especially if you're struggling to get to those guards. But yeah, I mean, again, low floor, high ceiling for all these Houston starters, but they're all a little bit too cheap for their upsides, which makes them good tournament plays.
So with that, let's go ahead and get into a first look. We got to answer the top Yahoo value question. Let's just see here. So top Yahoo value, Gary Trent Jr. Yeah, he's been priced. That does stick out. Kelly Olynyk, that sticks out. Surprisingly, Kyle Lowry, not min priced, but he's popping up there. Abaji, but no, it's definitely Trent and Kelly Olynyk. So I think those would be starting points for you. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the first look build. So I feel like it is kind of difficult starting points here because I feel like I could start with like 10 different players.
Yeah, I think Oubre is pretty tough to get away from. I'd probably get him in there.
Do you like him more as I guess, where do you like better? Is it guards or forwards? Because I
think forward. Yeah. Was that what you were going to say?
Yep. So we got that. But the only caution I have is I do kind of like DiVincenzo or Josh Hart. And so.
Yeah. I mean, you could play DiVincenzo at shooting guard too, right? I think either way. I mean, what are the prices between the two of them?
They're pretty similar. So DiVincenzo and Hart are basically the same. Josh Hart obviously has power forward eligibility. We could play both of them, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine playing both, and I really do like McBride now. I'm surprised he's not more popular. Only 19% last I checked.
Yeah, got so many heavy minutes in the last game, and I don't know. I guess with New York, how many is too many? Is it just those 3 that you'd be comfortable with?
Most teams, I wouldn't want to do this, but we're dealing with Thibs here, and he's not going to run more guys than he has to. I know we're getting Shake Milton into the rotation tonight, but I don't know. He's not running Bojan 40 minutes a night. He's not running some of these other guys crazy minutes. All the starters are going to be between 35 and 40 minutes. So usually I'd say no, don't do it. But when you're dealing with Thibs or maybe Nick Nurse, like there's a couple coaches in the NBA that I'm comfortable doing this with, and Thibs is the king of it. So yeah, I'm fine getting 3 starters in here.
I'm going to put those 3 in there for now.
Yeah, those are my 3 favorites by far. I definitely trust these 3 more than the front court, I will say.
Yeah, just minutes wise, for me, it's tough to pass up on 38 plus minutes from those, 3 in total. So
good matchup too. Yeah,
that's yes. From there, like, who do you want to target next? Because there is a lot of plays. I know you like Dennis Schroeder there. I know you hate campaigns, so probably not him. But Kyle Lowry's popping up as well. Kyle Lowry's a decent value play. Evan Mobley, there's a decent amount of value on the slate.
I mean, since we paid for the 2 like 8K-ish guys for the Knicks, it may be tougher to get to Luka. I will say he's probably my favorite pay up if he's in. But if we're going to go more balanced, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to see if I prefer. I like Lowry at 5,200. I'm pretty comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that as well. A little bit of an earlier game. So, well, it's the same time. I was going to say we could switch the lineup, but same time. So we had 3 positions left, 6.1 on average. Actually a decent spot. I mean, Nick Claxton, 6.7. Miles Turner, who is a decent leverage play. Mobley still there. We could go value with Kelly Olynyk, Carter. I mean, there's some routes we could go.
Yeah, I really like Turner as a play here. I just love the matchup with Dallas. He absolutely crushed them last time out. No one's playing him. So if we're eating a lot of chalk at other positions, I think center is the easiest way to get different tonight.
I agree there. So I'm fine with that as a play. So we have, about almost 6K left over on average. Could go to the cheap Tobias Harris. Could go with Kelly Olynyk. Abaji is a little bit priced up on DraftKings, but I still find the the ownership discrepancy kind of crazy. I do like Jordan Nwora as a GPP play as well, kind of popping up a little bit high owned, but forward wise, where would you say we should go next, or would you rather just go Schroeder at 6K, or kind of in that price range? Is there someone that you have a conviction on?
I mean, I think Olynyk's probably the safest starting at center there if we can put him at forward.
Yeah.
I'd say Cam Johnson is a pretty decent pivot, but yeah, Olynyk's probably the safest way to go.
Then we have 5.4 left over. So let's see here. So Wendell Carter's right there. Gary Trent's fine. I'd be fine with those two. Keldon Johnson becomes a pretty good play if we get news that Wemby is out. We got Jalen Suggs there. We got your boy Paul Reed there as well, who's a good GPP play tonight. I think we got some round, and then Micic there as well. So
you got a lot of good options. Yeah. I think Micic is the chalk, like if you're playing cash games, but everyone else you listed makes plenty of sense. I personally would probably go Paul Reed. I love getting the extra center in. I have three centers in that lineup if you go Turner, Olynyk, and Reed. But those are all great plays.
And really, besides the bigs, I would say lots of heavy minutes projected tonight. But I mean, that kind of naturally happens with bigs as well. Let's see. Any more questions? We got some more questions. All right. So no Trey Murray for Yahoo. He wasn't popping up. Let's see your thoughts on DeJounte Porter as a flyer. I mean, we've seen that before. It's like we've been there, done that. I don't know. Do you like him?
No, I just wouldn't play him. Yeah, because the backup center for the Pels is Larry Nance. They don't need to go big here necessarily. They could have McDaniels and Boucher playing the five. I don't know. I just think it's not the slate for it. We have enough value.
Yeah. Ingram or Hart? Yeah, that's a great question.
That's tough.
I like minutes, and I know Ingram's going to get a lot of minutes, but I just like that we're pretty much locking in 38 from Hart. I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Yeah, Hart's safer. If you need to get different, maybe pivot to Ingram. But if in a vacuum, just go Hart. He's definitely has the higher floor, I think.
Sam Merle question mark. So we did just get news that Okoro and Levert are in. So does that change how much you would want to be on Merle?
I mean, I already didn't love him. I mean, if he starts, you can mix him in. But if you're only playing a few lineups, I wouldn't touch him here, especially with those other guys ruled in now. Should cut into his minutes. Does he have upside at that price? Certainly. I mean, he's a three-point shooter. If he gets hot, I mean, he could carry you up a leaderboard, but the likelihood of that is pretty narrow, in my opinion. Did shoot 7 for 13 from 3 last time out. If he does that again here, I'm going to feel really stupid. But with those guys ruled in against the Celtics, I'm pretty comfortable getting away from it.
And then the last question, thoughts on Gary Trent Jr. So I feel like he's the one player for Toronto I just don't feel the need to get to tonight in terms of like the players that you would kind of naturally want to get to. Because you got Barrett, Kelly Olynyk, and I like Nwora. You got Grady Dick there. I don't know, Baji there. He kind of just feels like the forgotten guy tonight for them, even though he pops really well.
Yeah, I mean, he's fine as a last piece in. The data certainly likes him a lot. The minutes are going to be there. The upside's there, but he is scoring dependent, so he has a low floor. If he was chalk, I'd say no, but it looks like no one's really getting to him here. So if you want to mix him in, I think it's fine.
Yep. And that is going to do it for today's live stream. As you guys know, we do this live stream every single day at basically the same time, unless the slate's really drastic there. But yeah. Be in here tomorrow. Jump in the Discord chat here in just a second. Any closing thoughts here, Nick?
No, just keep an eye on that Wemby news. I'm hoping he's in. Luka as well, hoping he's in. Obviously, things could change if those guys are ruled out. So, again, just make sure you have a plan if that news doesn't break our way. And I know there's a few plays we like in that first game, but if you're only playing a lineup or two, I mean, Orlando-Charlotte has a very low total tonight. You could probably just skip that game, wait for the news. Everything else starts at 7:30 Eastern. So if you want to get away from that first game, it probably doesn't kill you. And just maybe wait for a little bit more of that news to break.
Yep. All right, that's going to do it, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. Good luck tonight.